woman, she thinks that you love them, you know. And of course she's saying it to me because it's like I'm grandpa, right? It's like, oh grandpa, why did Billy fuck me and he doesn't, you know, it's because I'm harmless. So, you know, I didn't say what I was thinking. I was saying, basically, here's the deal. If the man is under 40 and you're not married to him and you haven't been going out with him for about 8 months, you just have to think of him like a dog that's on your leg going, because that's all that's going on. Because young men have an animal nature, and that's reality. That's the way it is. Boy, I'm going to get beat up out in the street later. But this is true. I'm not defending it. Look, we have an old fuck in the White House who never grew up, and he's the biggest fucking pig in the world. And I heard earlier there was like, oh, if some of you, you know, if some of you voted for Trump or whatever, some of you might be pro-Trump, but this is a time. Hey, if you voted for Trump, fuck you. You ruined the world. So you know that's part of it. So she's saying this, but then here's the contradiction, and here's what I really don't understand. It's like then she says, you know, I'm married to Neil, and Neil's a great guy, I guess. You know, he's okay. And I'm thinking of like Molly Bloom's line in Ulysses, where she says, "As well him as another." And I'm thinking, what the fuck is it? You want every drop of sperm to be the nectar of love, but yet you can take or leave it, you know. I don't get it. If I were a more sophisticated man, a more romantic man, I would say this is the mystery of women. You know, you're mysterious. I'm just confused. Which is it? You either want to have passionate love or... Anyway, it doesn't make me angry. I mean, I like it. Frankly, if I were a woman, I wouldn't be with a man. I just want a vibrator and a phone number for a good handyman. And that's it. I have no idea why you want anything to do with us. I really don't. Since you matured when you were about 18, and, you know, we get it. Only when impotency moves in do we start to mature. And this is the story of life. Anyway, this is the... Oh, and another reason why I don't know why I was invited. This is about the woman's places in the home. I got married for the first time about 5 years ago. My wife watches HGTV. It wasn't until 2015 that I knew what a backsplash was. When I have a memory of domesticity before I was age 55, it's unclear, and it's like I'm a Yeti, and I'm running through the woods. You ever see those films, and you see just a glimpse of him, then he keeps moving? That was my domestic existence before I got married. So I have nothing to say about being in the home, because frankly, I never moved out of an apartment where Goodwill would take any of the old furniture. So this piece is on my blog and on my podcast, and I suggest that you read it and listen to it, because it's actually very well written, but I'm just going to improvise. It's an abridged version, and I'm going to improvise off of it. And it's called "I'm Sorry Women I Didn't Know." And I wrote this during the 2016 general election, or as we like to call it in my house, Armageddon. A positive aspect of elections is that all the unheard from groups are heard from, because they're votes, they have something. So Latinos were heard from, African Americans were heard from, women were heard from, right? And I've been a fairly decent person all of my life, because I've always been more interested in excellence. Well, you can't judge that from my performance here, but I've always been more interested in excellence than power, so I haven't been a prick. You know what I mean? I've never been interested in putting people down, keeping people down. I never looked at a woman and said, I don't want you to... I'm a pretty good guy. I'm sure when I was young and completely into, you know, I'm a fox terrier and heat phase, I'm sure I hurt some people. And I confess that now, and I apologize. You know what I mean? But you know, I dealt with some women that were assholes too, so let's not go too far. Now, I've always always been a big fan of the civil rights movement, and that's the key word, fan, because it's not like I marched or anything. First of all, I was too young. It was the 60s, but I was a kid. But not only that, but really, it wasn't for what it did for black people, it's for what it did for me. He said, these people don't take any shit. It's like they stand up for themselves. They say, I got a right to be black. I don't want to sit, my feet hurt, I don't want to sit in the back of the fucking bus. Sessions. Anyway, when Obama was elected in 2008, I was really interested and moved by, they would have these, I'm sure you saw them too, these interviews of elderly African American people who were denied the right to vote, who were in tears because they had an African American president. And that led me to watch 12 Years a Slave. And honestly, you think, well, where's this going? This is about women, the home, what's it talking about? Look, I don't think you can talk about women in a social or political sense at this point without talking about African Americans. Because the one thing about 12 Years a Slave, and I'm just going to summarize, you can read it in more detail. I always got the injustice, right? I've been against slavery, thank you very much. I think slavery's wrong. I don't think people should own people. Doesn't seem fair. You know, okay. But what I never got about it was the devastation, how cruel it was. I never understood that. And I still don't. You can't say, it's just, this was, I watched it on demand, alone, in my apartment in 2014. So you can't say, well, what kind of story is this about your life or whatever, you're just watching a movie. But it really moved me, as art does. Not to where I could understand the pain, but I thought, you know, if I were a black person, even now, generations after that happened, I'd want to kill every fucking white person that I ever saw. That's fucking ridiculous. Oh, Robert E. Lee statue. Robert E. Lee was a traitor and he owned slaves. Fuck Robert E. Lee. The Confederate flag. Hey, look, I'm an Italian American. I don't have pictures of Mussolini and the Mafia up in my house. Take down that fucking flag. It's an insult. You're just trying to intimidate people. That's emotional cruelty, but what that movie saw was the physical cruelty. They fucked them, they whipped them, they split apart families. It was fucking ridiculous. And I never really knew. And that led me to thinking about women. Because I wanted comfort. No, the reason why I thought about women is because, you know, there's so much that I've never known about that women have gone through. Like real oppression. And I never even started thinking about it until 2014. I saw 12 Years a Slave. And then this fucking asshole, this piece of shit, Trump, is out there monopolizing the culture and becomes the fucking president of the United States. Which I have to say to everybody shows that I don't think people realize how desperately wrong this is. What trouble we are in if this is a reality. That somebody that base and that low is the president of the United States. I didn't realize it, but most of the good qualities that I have in my life, I got from women. I got them from my mother. I get it from my wife Paula now. In the 80s, I read Gloria Steinem, Prophetic Feminism. I was completely into it. But for myself, I wasn't thinking about women. I was thinking, this will liberate me. But it took Trump, after 12 Years a Slave. Trump was better than 12 Years a Slave at showing how bad the oppression of women has been in this society. Here's what Trump represents about women. One, women are primarily of value for their sexual desirability. If they aren't deemed sexually desirable by the subjective assessment of a male viewer, they can be used as objects of derision to remind the world of the superiority of men, and particularly the specific man who is speaking. He and many other men, existential boys, fox terriers actually, have never outgrown the animal phase that I was living in when I was very young. I was lucky. I went to Notre Dame. That is an internment camp for hormonally challenged young men. So I was kind of in a pen and not allowed to do much damage to myself or others, thank God. Second point about Trump on women. Women are objects of personal gratification, which a man can earn by being rich, powerful, or when I was much younger, but no kid, didn't have enough money for a serious relationship. And I'll tell you one reason why I got married in my mid-50s. Because I'm an artist. And men told me, asshole men like Trump, told me, you know, if you don't have money, what fucking woman's gonna want you? So the oppression went two ways. Okay? That's a commodification of what a woman is. That is woman as slave. And watch Melania Trump, the tapes of her dancing with Trump at the inaugural ball. It's like she's in, you know, the creature from the Black Lagoon has her. She's like, oh. And can you blame her? With that fucking pig. I'm sorry. And that's the only way that this guy should be discussed. Not rationally, not with respect, not he's the president, we have to know, fuck that. He's a piece of shit. If women have the temerity to make decisions about their own bodies, they have to be punished. That can be anything from having an abortion, taking birth control, then to deciding that they don't feel like working out and they'd like to be heavy. They have to get bullshit all the time, and it's wrong. Women don't have stamina, they're weaker. They're not strong enough, even though they're much stronger than men, physically, emotionally, and every other way. You know, but Ginger Rogers famously did everything Fred Astaire did, dancing backwards. But she never got paid what Fred Astaire got paid. Women can be interrupted at will. Women, you know, if you say something, oh, we can just talk. We're men. That's why I write the blog, do the podcast, come up on stage and do this. I talk it all out, because I'd be interrupting everybody all the time, because I never shut up. Women are nasty bitches who are overly emotional, who must be controlled by the strong man who makes the decision. John Wayne shoving Maureen O'Hara down. Shut up! I'm the man. I'm going to spank you, put you over my shoulder, go and fuck you, and then you're going to make me dinner. The Quiet Man, ladies and gentlemen. John Ford, a classic of American film. Women's inferiority to men is not socially and culturally conditioned. This is actually, I was making a joke of it, but it's biological. This is what Trump actually believes. This is the same type attitude. His discussion about women is the same type of attitude when you've heard assholes like Charles Murray say that black people have smaller brains or they have smaller ability to reason than human beings. Women are just one group in this very diseased society, this very immoral society that is being severely mistreated by oppression. An oppression of money, and the masculinity's tied into the money. I never realized until I saw Trump do all his too real burlesque of these ugly attitudes how much all this had to hurt. And that's really what I'm sorry about. I never knew the pain that women went through, just by the very fact that you were women in this society. I never realized how unconscious and in the shadows the specific abuse and oppression is, and how even relatively happy and or very successful or very powerful women have to deal with these hardships every day. I wrote this post, I wrote a post, it was in 2016, with real humility and a healthy lack of confidence in what I am saying. I still have no idea what women go through, but at age 61, I'm 62 now, I'm finally starting to realize that it's a lot, and it's very difficult. It's much more than I ever imagined. Things that I used to think were just gender differences were in reality adaptations that women made in the face of injustice, just to survive. I now have a glimmer of how these attitudes and related actions are things that really hurt women. I want to thank all the women in my life, starting with my wife Paula, of course, but my mother, all the women in my family, all the women who've ever been colleagues with me working, neighbors, the women I've learned with in the theater and schools and elsewhere. Because, as I am with African Americans, I am so moved by your resiliency and generosity. You suffer and have suffered greatly, and you respond with love, kindness, and creativity. When I am at my best, I think I do that too. But now I'm just beginning to realize that I learned all of it from you. Thank you.